In this exercise, we will create a first-person shooter game, complete with physics materials, a scripted array of sounds that will play at random, and projectiles that are instantiated and destroyed via scripting. This tutorial will assume you have a basic understanding of the Unity game engine and your code editor of choice. Check out the Hello World, Unity interface, and basic script elements tutorials for more beginner tutorials. For this tutorial, I will be using a modified Unity layout and Visual Studio Code. Alright, let's start off by creating a new project called FPS. I also need to add in an asset package. The asset package I need to add in is called characters. It will contain multiple character types, including the FPS character we will be using. Select Done, and Create Project. When the Unity editor launches, you will see you have two folders inside the Assets folder: Editor and Standard Assets. We need to create 5 additional folders. In order to create those folders, make sure we're in the Assets folder. I'm going to hit Create Folder. The folders I need are Scenes, Materials, and if you notice, which is really easy to do, that you accidentally happen to make a folder inside of another folder, all you've got to do is take it, drag it back into Assets to get it where it belongs. So I have Scenes, Materials, Scripts, Prefabs, and finally Sounds. You'll notice that the Scenes folder has an underscore at the beginning of it. This is because in the Assets folder, all of these subfolders are sorted alphabetically, and I want Scenes to be at the very top because I want it to be the easiest to locate. This is not essential, however, it is a best practice. Alright, now up in the hierarchy, we need to create 3 3D objects. So I'm going to hit Create, 3D Object, Cube, Create 3D Object, Sphere, and Create 3D Object, Plane. The sphere will act as our projectile, the cube will act as our target, and the plane will act as our ground. Alright, for the plane, I'm going to make sure that I'm at 0, 0, 0 with the scale of 1, 1, 1. Easiest way to do this is just hit Reset. For the sphere, I'm going to set the position to x1, y1, z1, again leaving scale at 1, 1, 1 and default rotation. Finally, the cube. I'm going to set it at -1, 1, -1. Reason to do this for now is just so we can kind of see everything, see them separated easily, locate what we've got in our scene. We'll be moving them a little bit later, but for now, we just want to have a good view of everything in our scene panel. Alright, next thing we need to do is we need to locate the FPS controller prefab. It is located in the Assets folder under Standard Assets. Open up the Characters folder. Open up First Person Character folder. And finally open up Prefabs. Again, we're looking for the FPS controller. All I'm going to do is click and drag it up into my hierarchy to add it to my scene. Now, if I were to press play right now, I would get some notifications down here on the console. It says there are 2 audio listeners in the scene. Please ensure there is always exactly 1 audio listener in the scene. So I'm going to stop playing by toggling that play switch again. Reason that it's saying that is because the main camera has an audio listener on it, and the FPS controller has a camera on it which also has an audio listener. We only need 1 audio listener, and for that fact we only need 1 camera. So let's delete the main camera. Alright, now I'm going to change the name of my cube, my sphere, and my plane. Cube I'm going to call Box. Sphere I'm going to call Ball. And plane I'm going to call Ground. These are much more meaningful names, and really what we're doing is we're standing on the ground throwing a ball at a box. So these names are going to be a little bit more helpful. Alright, we need to now make the ground a little bit bigger. It's not a big enough play area. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the ground game object. Under scale, I'm going to bump up the scale of X to 10 and the scale of the Z to 10. Reason I don't need to do anything with the Y is because it is a plane. It does not have any height. Even if I were to change it to a crazy number like 1,000 or 10,000, nothing would actually change. The only time we'll actually see a change is if I were to set it to a negative number, because it would be flipped in reverse. That being said, we can just leave it alone at 1. Alright, we need to add a rigid body component to the box. Select the box, hit Add Component, Physics, Rigid Body. What that's going to do is it's going to allow it to have physics. It's going to allow it to interact with gravity. It's going to give it mass. It's going to let it, basically our goal here is to let it get hit by the ball. Alright, we also need to attach a script. We don't have any scripts at this point just yet. So what we're going to do, with the box object selected, I'm going to hit Add Component, New Script, and I'm going to call this script Box Script. Working in C#, I'm going to hit Create and Add. I'm going to leave the script empty for now. We'll edit it later, but for now we know we've got it added. That being said, before we go any further, if we look in our Assets folder, we'll see Box Script is not in our Scripts folder. Before we go any further, we need to move it into our Scripts folder to make sure we stay organized. Alright, next, on to the ball. Select the ball item and do a very similar thing. Add Component, Physics, Rigid Body. On this one, I'm actually going to bump the rigid body mass up to 2. Reason that we're going to do that is we want it to have a more forceful impact when it hits the boxes, kind of knock them around a little bit more. And while we're at it, let's actually go back into the box real quick. Let's set its mass back to 0.5. Alright, back on the ball, we just added the rigid body. We set its mass to 2. Now, I'm going to go in, I'm going to add a script to it, Add Component, New Scripts. I'm going to call this one Ball Script. Hit Create and Add. We will also leave it empty for now. Again, we need to make sure that Ball Script is placed in the Scripts folder so we can stay nice and organized. If we open up our Scripts folder, we'll see we have Ball Script and Box Script both located within. Alright, we've done enough to save our scene. Let's save. I'm going to go File, Save Scene. I'm going to make sure I save in my Scenes folder. If you don't see all this, just hit this little drop down menu right here. Make sure you're in the Scenes folder. I'm going to call it Scene 01. In the Scenes folder, hit Save. Alright, now we need to create 3 new materials in the Materials folder. So I'm going to go to Materials folder, and I'm going to hit Create Material. Alright, I need to have 3 materials. One is going to be the ball material. One is going to be the box material. And finally, the last one is going to be the ground material. Alright, I'm going to select a different color for each. For this one, I'm going to use my ball material. Under the inspector, I'm going to change the albedo, basically how we change the color. I'm going to go in and I'm going to make the ball red. I'm going to make the box material go for kind of a tan, boxy kind of color. Yeah, that looks good. Alright, and finally the ground, we're just going to go ahead and set it to green. I'll say it's grass, maybe. Alright, so we've got our 3 new materials. We've got our ball material, our box material, and our ground material. Now, in order to assign those materials, all we've got to do is drag them onto their corresponding elements. I could drag them on in the hierarchy, I could drag them on in the scene, either one. I'm going to go ahead and do it in the scene. So I'm going to grab my ball material, drag it onto my ball. Let's do ground. Box material. Hey, it won't hit the box. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and drag it up to the hierarchy. Box material. There we go. Alright, so we've got a ball material, we've got a ground material, and we've got a box material all applied. Alright, makes it much easier to differentiate what we've got here, easier to see. We can customize those later, but for now, they work. Alright, in the same materials folder, we need to create two new Physic Materials called ball bounce and box bounce. Alright, so in materials again, I'm going to hit create. I'm going to go down to Physic Material. Again, ball, bounce, and box bounce. Alright. One is on and 0 is off when we're looking at the bounciness here in the inspector. So right now, by default, bounciness is turned off. We are going to set the bounciness of both of these to 1. Turning on bounciness. We want our ball to bounce, we want our box to bounce. Alright. I need to set the ball bounce material as the material on the ball's sphere collider, and the box bounce material as the material on the box's box collider. So how does that look? Well, I'm going to go in, I'm going to select the box. Right here under the box collider, you can see I've got material, none, Physic Material. I'm going to drag in, again, I'm on the box item, I'm going to drag in the box bounce. Then I'm going to go under the ball, same thing, sphere collider, material, none, drag in, ball bounce. Alright, next thing we're going to do, we're going to edit the ball script. Up at the very top, I'm going to create a public integer called thrust, set it to 100, and create a private rigid body and set it to RB. Alright, at start, I'm going to set RB equals get component rigid body. This is going to give me access to the rigid body by simply typing RB. Next, I'm going to be adding force. Force is a physics object. It's a physics parameter. Basically, I don't want it to be messed up by the update speed. I don't want it to be messed up by the frame rate. So I'm actually going to switch from update to fixed update, which is frame rate independent. So in fixed update, I'm going to say RB, which is my rigid body, add force, and the add force is going to be a transform forward multiplied by thrust. Alright, I want the ball to disappear whenever it goes off the camera, so I'm going to add in another void. This time on became invisible. What this is going to do is whenever the ball is no longer visible, whenever it becomes invisible, it's going to destroy object, game object. So it's going to destroy the game object whenever it goes off camera. Okay, back in Unity, I need to add one more script in my scripts folder, create C# script. I'm going to call this one shoot script. I'm going to attach the shoot script to the FPS controller. My FPS controller, add component, scripts, shoot script. Then I'm going to go in and edit that script. Alright, for my shoot script, I don't need the void start, I only need update. so I can actually go ahead and get rid of the void start. I need to declare 3 public variables up top. First, public game object ball prefab. It's going to tell me what it is that I'm supposed to be instantiating. Public transform player, and then public game object camera. Alright, inside my void update, I'm going to write an if statement. If input get button down. The button that I want to use is fire 1, which by default is going to be a left click on the mouse. If input get button down fire 1, instantiate. What do I want to instantiate? The ball prefab. Where do I want to instantiate it? At the player transform position. And what's the rotation going to be? It's going to be the camera transform rotation. Make that a lowercase c to match what we've got up here. Reason we're doing this, I'm going to have an object called player that's going to be set in the Unity editor. That is where it's going to be instantiated. However, I want its transform to be based on the camera because I want it to be shot in the direction that I'm looking, not in the direction that the player is facing. Alright, I'm going to save and back into Unity. Alright, back in Unity, I get a warning. It says something about shoot script camera hides inherited member Unity engine component camera. Use the new keyword if hiding was intended. Basically, what this is saying to us is, hey, that word camera that you just used, that's a word that I already know. Are you sure you want to be using that? So we don't want to confuse ourselves or Unity any more than we have to. So we're actually going to go back in, re-edit our script again, because that word camera, as much as it sounds nice, has already been used and doesn't need to be used again. Alright, instead of using the name camera, I'm actually going to switch it to player cam. And again, make sure down here, we have used camera here before, we're going to switch that to player cam as well. Save. And back to Unity. Alright, no errors in the console, no warnings in the console. That's a good thing. Alright, now we need to turn the ball and the box into prefabs. So I'm going to go ahead and grab from the hierarchy the box and the ball, drag them into my prefabs folder. It's going to turn them into prefabs. I can now delete the ball and the box from the hierarchy, which leaves me with just the directional light, the ground, and the FPS controller game objects. Now, without proper adjustments, the ball would be instantiated from the top middle of the screen. In this tutorial, we're trying to make it look like the ball is thrown from one arm, not launched from the player's head, so this simply won't do. A simple way to create an object, a simple way to fix this is to create an object that's offset from the camera that instantiates the ball. This is also a technique that can be used in a traditional FPS game. In a game with a gun or a launcher, you would simply place an item that instantiates the ball, the bullet, projectile, at the end of the barrel or the gun, launcher, whatever it is you're using. To create an object that will act as the point of instantiation, we will use an empty game object. We want this game object to be located relative to the player camera, so we will make it a child of the FPS controller object. So I'm going to select FPS controller, hit create, create empty child. I'm going to name that new empty object player. Make sure it's reset to the 0, 0, 0. Alright, also I want to change its name to player. And I had that shoot script attached to the FPS controller. Now that I've got this player object, I actually want to move it. So I'm actually going to remove the shoot script from the FPS controller and instead attach it to the player. So I'm going to attach script, shoot script. Now I need to set the following public variables. I need to set ball, player, and player cam. For ball, I'm going to use the ball prefab. For player and player cam, I'm actually going to use just this player object that I created. You can see the player cam is a transform. The player is a transform. The player cam is an actual game object. I need to offset it just a little bit, so I'm actually going to set the position X at 1.5, position Z 1.5, and position Y, let's try 0.5 for now. We can tinker around with that if we need to make any sort of adjustment on it. Alright, now in order to make sure that the ball travels forward and doesn't spin, which will make it fly in all sorts of crazy directions, we need to actually make sure that the rigid body on the ball has its constraints set with a frozen rotation on X, Y, and Z coordinates. That'll make the ball fly straight. Finally, we need to add some boxes into the scene. So we can just go in, add a few boxes. Again, feel free to customize this part as much as you want. For now, I'm just giving myself a few targets to shoot at, placing them throughout the scene. Alright, a nice way to do this, so you have exactly the number that you want, because I'm going to start off with 10. You can see I have box 1, box 2, box 3. I can actually just go in and I can duplicate over and over again. And I'm actually going to duplicate until I get 11 boxes. Which you might be thinking at this point, wait, didn't we just say that we want to have 10 boxes? Yes, we did say that. That being said, Unity adds these nice little numbers in after the boxes, showing us which numbered off box they are. That being said, it numbers the duplications. It doesn't give a number to the original one. This is just a personal preference thing, but I think it's pretty useful when trying to keep track of exactly how many objects you have. If I want 10, I'm going to make 11. Then I'm just going to delete the original. Now I've got all the boxes automatically numbered for me, box 1 through 10. Alright, now I'm going to create an empty, call it box container. This is going to act as a container to put all my boxes in. So I can select boxes 1 through 10, drag them into the box container, and there we go. I've got a nice little box container with all my boxes in it. Now, I want more boxes than just 10 boxes. I want to have, 50 boxes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to duplicate that, give it a new location, duplicate that, give it a new location, duplicate that, give it a new location, duplicate that, give it a new location. Again, I'm aiming for 50, so I'm actually going to make 5 duplications in addition to the original one. Helps with my numbering system. I can get rid of that first unnumbered one. Now I have box containers 1 through 5, 10 in each, 50 boxes sitting around my level. At the end you should have something kind of like this. Basically just boxes spread around throughout your scene. Alright, let's give it a test run. Alright, so my boxes all fall, they bounce nicely. My ball is being instantiated. It looks like it's being thrown from the side. It's bumping into my boxes beautifully. I probably want it to go a little faster. I want my ball to fly a little faster. I'm going to be throwing it a little harder than that. You can actually play around with the thrust. Thrust is the speed that the ball is thrown at. Cranking the speed up too high, the thrust up too high, will, based on the way that the physics are interacting, if you set it up too high, it'll throw really nicely, but it'll actually pass right through the boxes. I found that 700 is a pretty good working one for me with this size project, with the size of prefabs that I'm using, the size colliders that I've got set on them. 700 works pretty well. It looks nice, and I don't end up with too many boxes getting missed based on the calculation speed. If you really find yourself running into some trouble, there's actually something else that you can do. You can change the project's time step. This affects how fast or slow the game is processing information. Going too crazy with this, especially on graphically intensive game, can be disastrous, so use caution. However, for this project, we won't do anything that hurts playability. So we can go up to Edit, Project Settings, and select Time. It's going to open up in the inspector the Time Manager. I'm going to set Fixed Time Step to 0.01. This should prevent any missed collision. Every collision should count every single time. I shouldn't see any balls flying through boxes ever in this game. Alright, at this point, my game works. However, in order to make it a little bit more realistic, we want to add some sound effects to the boxes so that they seem a bit more like real objects. Attached to this tutorial is a folder with 6 sounds. We will be using 6 different sounds so that the sound effects are more realistic and don't just sound like the same single sound over and over and over again. Alright, so we're going to start off selecting the box prefab. Make sure you're editing the box prefab, that way all the other instances of the prefab get the same edit applied to them. I'm going to add an audio source, add component, audio, audio source. I'm going to disable play on awake because I don't want my sounds to play as soon as I start the game up. I only want them to play whenever I want them to, which will be on collision. Alright, I already placed my 6 box sounds in the sounds folder. Now I need to go in and open up my box script, which before we left completely empty. Alright, in my box script, I actually don't need void start or update, so I can get rid of those. I am going to create a public audio clip, and I need to make an array, because I need an array, a list of sounds to choose from. So in order to make an array, basically all I got to do is insert these little hard braces right here. Public audio clip, call it audio clip. And again, like I said, I want these to play on collision, so I'm going to type a void on collision enter. On collision, I'm going to get component audio source clip is set to audio clip random range. I'll be selecting randomly from the range from 0 to audio clip length. Again, what this is doing, this is selecting randomly from 0, which is the first sound in our array, to the last one, which is measuring just the length of our array. Alright, so it randomly selects on this line. Next line we need it to play, so we're going to say get component audio source play. Alright, save that and return to Unity. Alright, if we select our box prefab, if we look at our box script, we'll notice we have this little drop down audio clip. If I select that, set my size to 6 because I've got 6 audio clips that I want to choose from. All I've got to do, add these sounds into the element slots. So 1 to 1, 2 to 2, etc. Again, what this is going to be doing, because we created this array of sounds, it's going to be randomly selecting one of these sounds to play every time a box collides with another object. Alright, let's give it a test. Alright, we got good box sounds. Let's go ahead and try it out with full screen. You can see how everything works. Alright, boxes fall nicely, make a sound when we shoot them. We don't have the same sound over and over, which tends to make, let those boxes calm down, same sound over and over tends to make the boxes a little bit rattly sounding. Doing it this way gives them a nice sound. You can play around a little bit with the 3D audio settings, make a new sound you could add in for your ball. You could make the blocks disappear when they're out of view, implement a point system with a windscreen, lots of things you could add in. That being said, that's everything for this tutorial. Hope you've enjoyed it, and happy coding!